Alright, so my name is Heather Lansky, and I am a consultant with the Department of Biomedical Informatics. My primary role is to serve as admin for REDCap and also as a brand admin for Qualtrics for the medical center. We support REDCap across campus, but for Qualtrics, I just support medical center users for Qualtrics. So we're going to talk about some different research survey tools, but before we get there, one thing to keep in mind is that your data collection efforts are really a team effort. And if you think about that as you're thinking about your tools, that will help you set up yourself for success. So there's a lot of things that go into the data capture system. It's the research staff, it's the participants that you're designing the surveys for. If you're going to have interviewers in the field doing the interview, it's the biostatisticians or whoever might be analyzing the data on the back end. All of those people go into the consideration of your data capture system, and in some cases may drive your choice of tool. As the old saying goes, garbage in, garbage out. So the best tool in the world is only as good as the data that you put in it. So if you design well from the beginning, your project has a much better chance of being successful in the end. So how do we do that? Well, one of the things is to emphasize clarity in your survey tools. So anything that you're going to have measured in a certain way, you should have defined in your protocol. How is this measurement going to be taken? If it's a blood pressure, is it standing? Is it sitting? Is it, if your waist circumference is notoriously difficult to collect. So have a specific procedure for how these things are to be measured, and then you'll make sure that you have standard data across time. Anything that's confusing to your participant is less likely to be successful and properly assessed. So test your surveys, test your instruments as you're going along to make sure that it makes sense to you. I also recommend having somebody outside the medical field, a spouse, a friend, somebody look at it from a new perspective. My husband will pick up on things. He'll say, I don't know what this acronym means, or this question isn't clear, things that I would never think of because I'm immersed in it every day. So I don't even see it anymore after a time. Like I say, as many people as you can have eyes on it would be the better. So what are some of these data capture problems that I'm talking about? One could be incorrectly measured values. Think about the units that you're going to want things measured in. Are you going to measure in kilograms? Are you going to measure in pounds? And specify that in your data collection survey so that you know and the person doing the analysis knows. So if there's clearly an outlier, then it's likely that it was recorded in the wrong unit. And that way just everybody's clear on what it's supposed to be. Have a plan for what your missing values are going to be. So if a participant skips a question, if a question isn't working for whatever reason and you're not getting good responses, how are you going to handle that on the back end? So think about, are you going to build that into your data collection process? Are you going to require responses for everything? Are you going to code it on the back end? Those are things you want to think about ahead of time because depending on what you decide to do could drive some of your design decisions. Maintain your vigilance as your study progresses. So build your study, do your testing, but then don't just let it run. Go out there, look at your data periodically, export it, see what's happening. Then you can tell what's going on with some of your responses, some of your questions. You'll see, why is everybody skipping number 26? And you can go in and look and, oh, well, the branching logic isn't right. So nobody's seeing question 26. So you can really start to see patterns and trends in your data before you don't want to get 5 years into data collection and then find these problems. The sooner that you can look at it, the sooner you can identify things, the better your data is going to be in the end. It's also a good idea just to keep tabs on your accrual. Are you accruing the racial, the gender, the different breakdowns that you want to in your study population? Use your field commenting if you're using REDCap to comment for anything that's not being recorded for whatever reason so that you can go back and look at that later on. It really helps you to identify those bottlenecks and things that could be improved in process. So talking about specific tools, we'll talk about REDCap first. So REDCap stands for Research Electronic Data Capture. It was designed by Vanderbilt under one of the original CTSA grants and with NIH. It is a secure web-based data collection system. We have had it here at the Medical Center for about 8 years, 9 years, and over that time it has really grown and expanded, and it's really become a mature system now for collecting research data. Our data are stored here on premises. They're not stored in the cloud. They are stored on OSU servers and backed up off-site, like all the security professionals tell you to do. One of the nice features of REDCap is you can control the access rights to your project in a very granular manner. So you can specify, I only want this person to have read-only access to this particular form. So you can get very granular in the access that you allow people to have to your data. You can de-identify a data set with more or less a click of a button. If you've designed your project correctly in the beginning and identified what your identifiers are, when you go to export your data, you can say de-identify my data set, and it'll strip all those identifiers out for you and export you a nice de-identified data set that you can then send to whoever you like. REDCap has a built-in audit trail that tracks who accessed the data, who exported data, any changes that they made to it under their username, and a timestamp. So you know exactly what was accessed, what they did, and when. You can also invoke an optional module to require a reason for why. So if you have data that's already been collected and somebody's going to make a change to that data, you can require a reason for why they're changing that data. Those types of audit trail features are really helpful if you have a monitored project like a data safety monitoring board or somebody that's really looking at what's happened to your data, or for more heavily regulated studies. So who uses REDCap? Well, it's over 3,300 institutions. All the universities in the Big Ten use it. It's in over 125 countries. Many hundreds of thousands of projects at this point, and hundreds of thousands of users. There have been many articles that have cited REDCap. As I say, it's really grown into a very mature system, and they are always improving it. They are always adding new features. We tend to lag a little bit behind because the medical center is fairly conservative in terms of upgrading systems, but we roll out as quickly as we can for you once we've tested them and made sure that everything's going to work fairly well. As we get more and more projects in the system, we have to do more and more robust testing to make sure that the upgrade isn't going to mess up anybody's project. So why would you use REDCap? As I mentioned before, it's web-based, which means that all of your data are accessible to the entire study team from anywhere. So this is really different from storing your data in an Excel file where you might have to put it on a flash drive, or you have to email it to somebody and nobody knows what the latest version is, and it's much harder to track and keep everybody on the same page at the same time. With a web-based system, everybody has access to the latest version at all times. You can access REDCap from anywhere on or off campus. If you're on the PHI instance of REDCap, you will need either a VPN or dual authentication to log in to get to that. As I said before, it was designed for research capture, so that is its main purpose. It is designed to integrate data that you get from the participant in a survey format with data collection that you might be doing manually. So you may have an extraction from Nina's team where you've downloaded data from the research data warehouse, and you're going to enter some of that data from the medical chart, but then you're also going to send your participants some surveys. So it can combine all that data in the same project. At this time, unfortunately, we don't have a seamless way of pulling data from IHIS directly into REDCap. It is a manual export. You get the data export, and then you can design your REDCap project to receive that data in a manual import. But if you do it well, it's really not all that painful. It facilitates longitudinal data collection, so you can have multiple events and multiple instruments assigned to those events. You can send your surveys out on that prescribed schedule, so you can say, every 3 months I want them to receive this survey. Every other week I want them to receive this other survey. So you can be really pretty robust in how you assign surveys and how they're assigned to a schedule. It has features like validation, so you can choose for your numeric fields. You can say, you know, this is a data field that I need measured to 2 decimal places, and it has a minimum of 12 and a maximum of 256, and it will validate that data so that you're really making sure that you're getting what you expect to be getting. You can do branching logic, and you can get fairly complicated with your branching logic. So you can say, only ask this question if participant X answers to questions 4, 6, and 12. You can be really pretty complex with your branching logic. As I mentioned before, you can do commenting at the field level. So as you're entering data, if you couldn't get a weight on somebody because they were in a body cast or something happened, you can comment directly on that particular field and say this data wasn't completed because of whatever, which gives you a great deal of flexibility of recording exactly what happened with your data. The data are stored behind the firewall, so they are protected. As I mentioned, the audit trail and the logging tells you, and as well as all of the past data dictionaries are stored. So as your data changes over time, as you change your forms, because despite our best of intentions that we build a survey, we put it in the field, something has to change, a question isn't working, or we decide to add a new survey, those things will change over time, especially if you have a long study period. REDCap will keep track of each one of those data dictionaries. So you know version 1 was like this, version 2 was like that, version 6 had this question. So when you export those data dictionaries, whoever's doing your analysis will see, oh, these subjects didn't have a response for this question because it wasn't on the version of the survey that they took. So you can really have pretty good control over what's happened to your surveys and your instruments over time. So as I mentioned, REDCap has two different project types generally. There's surveys that can be anonymous or identifiable. You can send those out on a schedule, but you can also send them out on logic. So you can say, send this survey to women over 55 that have never been pregnant that have A1C of XYZ. So you can be very specific in how surveys are sent out and to who and at what time point. You can send the surveys out by email. You can have a public link that you put on a web page or a flyer. We are working with information security to get Twilio approved, which is a text messaging system. So you could text message your participants a survey link, and they could complete it. It's going to send them the link to the survey, and then they can complete it on their phone. In the data entry side, that's really where you're entering that data from IHIS, or you're entering data from a chart or some other place other than survey data. And you can combine those things together in any sort of format that you want to. So you can have data entry forms with a survey, or surveys by themselves, or you can combine it in any limitless combinations. Some of the unique features that REDCap has, it has a file repository, which is different from being able to upload a file to a particular record. You can have a file repository that sort of serves as a mini Buckeye box for that project. So you can store your protocol there, you can store your informed consent document, anything that the entire study team might need to see. It can be one location where you keep the most current version of all your documentation, where everybody has access to it, and it's the one source for sharing that information. You can also email documents through the file repository. So if you have a multi-center trial, you can send an email to the other sites and say, hey, a new version of the protocol is available, a new version of the consent is available, and you can request a receipt when they've opened that file. You don't necessarily know that they read it, but you at least know that they downloaded it and they have it. You can configure those user rights, as I said, on a granular basis. You can have data access groups, which are really helpful in that multi-center scenario. So you can put each site in their own data access group, and they can only see the data from their own data access group that they have created. You can lock your records. Most commonly, this is used for once a set of data has gone to the statistician for analysis, they will lock those records so that no further changes can be made to them because they're already being analyzed. And you do that on a record-by-record basis. So you can say, lock records 1 through 36, and then 2 months later, you lock the next batch. And whoever you give locking privileges to also has unlocking privileges. So you can lock and unlock if you need to. But generally, they have 1 or 2 people on a study team that have those locking privileges. REDCap has a randomization module. If you're going to use that, we strongly recommend that you work with a statistician, or if you yourself have a pretty good stats background. And the reason for that is that especially if you're talking about a double-blinded trial, can be fairly complex to set up the allocation tables and to set up all the user rights to make sure that the appropriate people are blinded to the allocations. But it is a really nice feature to be able to just push a button and have your participants randomized on site. There's a data quality module. It has several built-in data quality queries already in it, so you can sweep for missing data. You can sweep for data that is out of range. You can, if you have calculated fields in your form and you've made a change to your calculation, you can sweep through and recalculate all of those values. And you can put any number of custom data quality rules onto your project. So if you want to sweep through and make sure that one of your inclusion criteria may be that you can't have anybody under 18. So you could have a data quality rule that says any age under 17 or under 18, flag it. And you could have that done in real time. So as data are being entered, it pops up a box that says, hey, you violated a data quality rule. Are you sure this is the data that you want to enter? You can add multiple study arms. So if you have that randomized trial, you can have an arm for control and an arm for treatment, or we have sometimes studies who use an arm for screening and then an arm for enrollment. There's a variety of different ways that you can use study arms. You can use an arm per site if you have a multi-center study. So there's a whole lot of creative ways that you can use that. So the design interface is fairly simple. There are 3 ways that you can build forms in REDCap. You can use the online designer, which is what I typically recommend for people that are new to REDCap. You can use the data dictionary, which is Excel-based. And the nice thing about being able to build in Excel is that you can leverage some of the tools of Excel, like find and replace, and the ability to copy and paste. So if you have big blocks of questions that you're repeating or very similar, you can copy and paste those, and it's much faster than doing them one by one in the online designer. And the third method is you can download instruments from the REDCap shared library. The REDCap shared library is maintained by Vanderbilt. Anybody in the REDCap consortium can submit forms to be curated for the shared library. It has almost all of the promise instruments in it. It has many of the common validated instruments that are out there, the CESD, pretty much any of the alphabet soup of, unless it's a really specific, some very disease-specific measures aren't there, but really common ones are typically there if they're not copyrighted. That's the downfall. If it has a copyright, then you have to get copyright release before we can build it for you in REDCap. But that can save you a lot of time. If you look in the REDCap shared library and you find, oh, hey, there's a demographics form in there that I like, I'll use that one. Here's an adverse events form. Here's a medications form. Here's 3 of my 12 instruments that I want to use. So you've already built over half of your project just by downloading things from the shared library. The record status dashboard is sort of the forest view of your data. So you're looking at each participant and every event that you've identified and every instrument that goes underneath those events. REDCap has a color-coded system for identifying the status of each one of those forms. So red is incomplete, yellow is unverified, and green is complete. You can't change what those words mean, but you can change them to mean whatever they mean to you in your process. So complete might be all the data is completely there and there's nothing left to be done. Or it may mean, we've started it and we're moving on. It can mean whatever you decide that it should mean. When you're in the data entry interface, this is kind of what it looks like as you're just walking through the fields. REDCap has all this standard field types that you see in SurveyMonkey or any of the other tools. You could have text boxes or radio buttons or check boxes, pretty standard. Your REDCap data dictionary is in CSV file format, which can be read by Excel. The data dictionary documents your field names, the field type, and any of your branching logic. This is what allows you to eventually build forms in the data dictionary if you choose to. But it's also really helpful to give to your statistician or whoever is doing your data analysis, because they can see then the values of each one of your variables. They can see the variable naming. It really can be a good thing for them to have a copy of. You can share forms between projects using the data dictionary. So if you have a friend that created a really cool form that you would like to use, they can download the data dictionary, send that to you, you can upload it to your project, and you've shared the project. That's essentially what the REDCap shared library is one big repository of all kinds of data dictionaries that you just download and add to your project. We are working on a local a local shared library just specific to OSU. We're hoping to roll that out sometime this year. I have a pretty good collection of data dictionaries that I've built over time of various things. I have one that I'm working on right now for informed consent, because that's a new and fairly hot topic with folks, is how do I put my informed consent document into REDCap. So I built a template that allows you to just go in and enter the relevant parts of, because the HIPAA language is pretty standard. You just put in the particulars about your study, the PI and the title and so forth, and then it generates the informed consent for you. It's got quite a bit of HTML in it to make it formatted, to make it look like the informed consent documents do. So is there anything REDCap can't do? It can't prevent data that's out of range. You can put those warnings on there, but they can always be overridden. So they say, okay, yeah, I know the weight is too high or whatever, but I'm entering it anyway. It doesn't support billing within the software. So if you have to bill for your research labs or other things, you have to do that in some other system. It's 21 CFR Part 11 compliant, or I mean ready, but it's not compliant on its own. And the reason for that is 21 CFR Part 11 compliance is more than just an evaluation of a software. It's an evaluation of the entire system, the entire project. And it's done on a per study basis. The FDA won't just say to us, yes, your REDCap system is compliant for everyone. It's really per study. They want to see your particular study's plans for how you're tracking missing data, how you're tracking changes. So all of that has to go into your compliance document that you will then submit to the FDA to get a compliance agreement from them. We can work with you on that. As of yet, we have not had one that's gone all the way through the process. We're in the process of documenting the technical side of REDCap to be approved from the FDA, but it's always going to have that study level component as well. So if you are thinking that you're going to want to use REDCap for a study that needs 21 CFR Part 11 compliance, the sooner you can talk to us, the better. Ideally before you've submitted your grant application. So we can talk to you and we have enough lead time to get that, to get all of that done. Within REDCap, there are a number of embedded training videos, so you can watch those videos on your own time to go through and look at different things. We also provide in-person training here at OSU. Stuart has these slides, so he will send them out to you, so you'll have this information. I rotate through 4 different modules of REDCap. I have 2 training modules, kind of a level 1 and a level 2. Level 1 is for people that really have never touched REDCap before. They've never seen it before. They haven't done anything with it. So that's kind of I don't want to call it intro, but it's the beginning. Design 2 picks up where Design 1 leaves off with some of the more complicated features like branching logic and calculated fields, and it just adds on to what you can do with REDCap. REDCap at its base is very simple, but it can also be very complex depending on where you want to take it. Almost anything that you want to be done can be done some way or another, but it may take some hurdle jumping to get there. The third session is REDCap for data entry. This is really designed for people that are just going to interact with REDCap forms that are already built. So if you have students or other folks that are on your team that are just doing data entry, this is a good one for them to take just to learn how to come in, interact with an existing form. How do I record those field comment log things that we're talking about? How do I open a new record? How do I add data to an existing record? Those types of things. And lastly, the REDCap for project managers and coordinators. This is more of an administrative course in how do you build reports? How do I get my data out of REDCap? How do I do that de-identified data set? So it has more to do with the ongoing management of a study in REDCap. So now we'll shift gears and talk a little bit about Qualtrics. Qualtrics only has the survey function. It doesn't have that data entry capability. So it's just for sending surveys out to participants and getting data back. Its approval for PHI is limited. It's been done in a couple of cases, but it has not been broadly approved for PHI. So if you are collecting PHI data, 99% of the time, you're going to use REDCap. Ohio State has an institution-wide license for Qualtrics. You have access to it through your name.number. If you are a medical center employee, we also ask for your institutional data policy training certificate through Buckeye Learn. That is because of the PHI that we handle. We want to make sure that you understand the institutional data policy and where data goes and where data doesn't go. And optionally, depending on who you are surveying and the purpose of your survey, you may have to go through what we call the Qualtrics review team. For example, if you're surveying staff nurses, those surveys have to go through the nursing union. So we can put you in touch with the contact to do that. And any surveys that are going out to faculty and staff, sort of in the job satisfaction category of, how well do you like working for this department. The communications and marketing folks want to have their eyes on that as well. Mostly just to make sure that departments aren't duplicating work that's already been done. There's been the one voice survey that went out, and there's been various things, and they just want to make sure that we're not sending out 15 little surveys to ask the same group of people the same questions. It has an integrated statistics module called Stats IQ that was just rolled out last summer. I'm still looking at that and having some of my statistician friends looking at it. I don't have a verdict yet on how robust it is. My general consensus on both REDCap and Qualtrics is that you're going to have to export that data out to do any kind of really rigorous analysis on it. Both REDCap and Qualtrics have some onboard reporting, have some onboard analysis tools, but it doesn't do anything close to the type of analysis that we usually see out of research projects. So you're probably going to have to export it out of Qualtrics into something else. It exports to Excel, to SPSS, and to XML, and I think it also exports now to Tableau. It's available to faculty, staff, and students at no cost, as I say, through your name number. If you want us to build a Qualtrics project for you, we can do that through our fee-for-service the same way we do for REDCap. So if you aren't comfortable with building it, you can do a consult with us, and we can talk about building it for you. So a little side-by-side comparison of REDCap Qualtrics. I won't run through this because Stuart's going to give you the slides. If you want more information really on the details between REDCap and Qualtrics, on March 26th, I am doing an information session over in the Research Commons that is an hour-long comparison of different features of Qualtrics and REDCap. The main thing to take away is that REDCap is approved for PHI, REDCap is longitudinal, and REDCap can do electronic signature for informed consent, whereas Qualtrics can't do any of those things. And last but not least, what about our good friend Excel? Everybody loves Excel. It's widely available. It's easy. It's familiar, but it's not a data collection tool. You can easily corrupt your data set by just doing a simple sort, and you've irreparably changed your data. There's a file limit of 256 columns. So many of our research projects have multiple surveys, multiple questions, and will quickly exceed that column limit. You can do validation in Excel, but it's somewhat cumbersome. You have to understand the formulas, and formulas can be corrupted, and it can be kind of a mess. You have the potential for mixing PHI and non-PHI. There's no warnings, there's no system to tell you, hey, this is a PHI element, this isn't, and you can just mix it all together and you have no way of knowing. As I mentioned before, you have the multiple versions, multiple users process, where you have somebody makes a change to it and who has the latest version, and oh, it's on her flash drive, and oh, she's in Florida, and trying to keep all that data together can be really difficult when you're dealing with just one file system. And you have no reliable backup for if something gets lost or corrupted. So your next steps. Most research studies should use REDCap. In a few limited circumstances, Qualtrics may be a better tool. We do consultations every Thursday. Nina's group does them every Wednesday. We do them every Thursday. So you can come see us over in Pryor. There's a schedule consultation link. You can self-schedule, so you pull up my training or my consultation calendar, and you can book a time, any open time on a Thursday. If you can't meet on Thursdays for some reason, you can shoot us an email, and we will work with you to schedule a consultation in a time frame that works for you. If you want to request a REDCap account, there's the link for the new REDCap user link, where you'll fill out your information that we need to create your account, and we'll get that started. If you need a new REDCap project, there is a link to create a new REDCap project. If you are brand new to REDCap and you don't know if you want to use REDCap or not, you can still do the new user request, and you can do the project request. And in the project request, there's an option for, I just want a test project. I just want a little test project that I can play around and see what REDCap can do for me. You can complete that, and we will set those up for you. And we typically give you 30 days with your test project to work with it. And if you need longer than 30 days, we can extend that. But that's typically what we do. We do have that option for voucher support and for fee-for-service. So if you have a really complicated REDCap project that you know you're not going to be able to do, to learn how to do it in the timeline that you need, which is usually the issue, time is usually the issue, You can meet with us. We'll give you a quote for what that will cost. If you have a faculty PI, you can apply for voucher support through the CCTS for up to $3,000 of services that you can use towards your REDCap build. We highly recommend that you work with a biostatistician or somebody to just look at your data management plan, look at your data collection, especially if you're using randomization. That's really important. In closing, your successful data capture, the more planning you can do up front, the better your project's going to be on the back end. It seems like it's a lot of work to design your project, test your project, and go through all these steps, but it really will save you legwork and headaches on the back end when you get the data you weren't expecting, and now you've got to clean up what you didn't do. No matter how good the tools are, if you don't plan ahead, you run the risk of not having what you like. This is my contact information. I'm not very reachable by phone because I'm either teaching classes like this or presenting or meeting and consultations. So the CCTS Informatics email box is the best way to reach me. I do have a colleague, Amanda Carroll, who also monitors this box with me. So you will usually hear from one of us when you put your email through, and we will help you. Does anybody have any questions? I know I ran through a lot really fast, but I'm trying to get you out of here on time. Okay, great. Well, if you think something later, feel free to send me an email. Yeah?
REDCap trainings, where are they?
They are in Pryor Hall, the Pryor Health Science Library, room 240, but we also do them by WebEx. So if you register for it, you'll get a calendar link that has the WebEx information. We've started doing them over in the Research Commons. I don't think the next one in the Research Commons is until May. We're trying to have some over there as well, but most of our folks are over here on this side.
Just make sure you sign